Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا يرضى وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Now, before I get into this particular video, I want to preface it by saying that I am not a scholar. Okay, I've done this particular lecture twice already. I've done it on my Facebook page, like just an open talk. So I've done it on one of the private Facebook group that I have there, and I've done it on my public page as well. So, and I preface it the same way. And I'm telling you right now on YouTube, I am not a scholar, right? And if I'm wrong about this theory that I have, then I will humbly retract it and take it back. It's no problem. But I want to share this belief that I have had this belief for a very long time. I've always been hesitant to share this belief simply because it's not in any of the books, right? So you won't find it in the books of the Salaf. You won't find it in the books of the modern scholars. You won't find it in any of their lectures, right? This is my personal belief. And the feedback that I got on my Facebook was very positive about this belief. So I want to share it with the people, right? So that maybe, somebody can look into it and see if I'm correct about this particular theory, right? But I believe that this theory that I have about the Hadeeth of Jibreel is correct. I strongly believe that. I've strongly believed it for a long time. And I'm sharing it with the people now, right? And I'm prefacing this lecture now by saying I'm not a scholar, okay? I'm not, all right? So if I'm wrong, no problem, right? And I will retract. It's not a big deal, right? So the Hadeeth of Jibreel, as you know, is one of the most important hadith in Islam. And I decided to put my thoughts on YouTube simply because I can gather my thoughts on YouTube in a more coherent manner instead of just free speaking like I do on my Facebook Live. I just kind of speak freely, right? So I can gather my arguments in a structured way so that you can see where I'm going with my theory. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the Hadeeth of Jibreel, as you know, it's found in many books of Hadith. Many lectures have been given on it. Many books have been written on it. You can find the Hadith in Bukhari, you can find it in Muslim, you can find it in Ulema you can find it in Arba'in Nawawi and other books, right? And basically from the path of Ibn Umar, who heard from his father, radiyallahu anhuma, where he says, بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم, that we were sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day, okay? إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب وشديد سواد الشعر. Right, so then came to us a man who had a very white thobe and very exceedingly black hair. لا يرى عليه أثر السفر, and we didn't see any signs of traveling on him. ولا يعرف منا أحد, and none of us knew who he was. حتى جلس إلى نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم, so he sat next to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. وإذ طلع ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه, and he put his knees next to his knees. ووضع كفيه على فخذيه, and he put his hands on his thigh, on his lap, right? وقال يا محمد أخبرني عن الإسلام, and then he said, "O Muhammad, tell me about Islam." قال أنا إسلام أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وإقامة الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت إن استطعت عليه سبيلا. So Islam is to bear witness that there's nothing worthy of worship except for Allah, and to stand for the salah and to pay the charity and to to fast in the month of Ramadan and to make the Hajj to the house if you have the ability to do so. Qala sadaqt, and he said, you've spoken the truth. فَأَجِبْنَا لَهُ يَسْأَلُهُ وَيُصَدِّقُهُ. And I thought it was strange that he would ask the question and then confirm that the answer that the Prophet ﷺ gave, that it was actually the truth. قَالَ أَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِيمَانِ. Okay, so he said, tell me about faith. قَالَ أَن تُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ. It is to believe in Allah. وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ, and to believe in the angels. وَكُتُبِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and to believe in the books and the messengers and the last day. وَتُؤْمِنُ بِقَدْرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ, and to believe in the divine decree, the good of it and the bad of it. قَالَ صَدَقْتَ, and he said, you have spoken the truth. قَالَ أَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِحْسَانِ. So tell me about perfection. قال, Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَن تَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ فَإِنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. Right, so it is to worship Allah as if you see Him. And even though you do not see Him, then know that Allah, He sees you. قال أخبرني عن الساعة. And this is pretty much the part where I want to get into, right? So, so tell me about the hour or the last day, right? The day of judgment, essentially. Right? So the one who is the one who is questioning doesn't know more about it than the one who is being questioned, right? قال أخبرني عن أماراتها. So tell me about its signs. قال, and this is the crux of what I want to get to. قال أن تلد أمة ربتها وأن ترى هفة العراء الأعلى رياء الشاة يتطاولون في البنيان. Okay, it is that the female slave will give birth to her Lord, and you will see the poor, destitute, desert camel shepherd Arabs competing with each other to build these high, lofty buildings. فَأَنْتَ لَقُهُ فَلَبِثُ مَلِيًّا. So after some time, he had left, right? فَقَالَ يَا عُمَرْ أَتَدْرِي مَنْ السَّائِلُ. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Umar, do you know who the questioner is? Qultu, I said, meaning Umar Khattab, I said, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. Okay, so Allah and His Messenger, they know best. Qala فَإِنَّهُ Jibril أَتَاكُمْ يَعْلِمُكُمْ دِينُكُمْ. So verily that was Jibril. He came to teach you your religion, right? So this is the Hadeeth of Jibreel, and I just really want to focus on the parts where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَن تَلِدَ أَمَّةُ رَبَّتُهَا, right? Where he said that a slave girl will give birth to her Lord, right? وَأَن تَرَى هُفَةَ الْأُرَاءَ الْعَالَةَ رِيَاءَ الشَّاةِ يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. And then you will see the poor, destitute, desert Arabs competing with each other to build these tall buildings, right? So we all agree, and even if you look, even today, and I'll post on link, or I might put in the video extra and this particular part, right, where this part of the hadith, when it's talking about the desert Arabs competing to build tall buildings, right, we all understand that this is one of the signs of the hour, and it's happening right now in our time, right? We can see this, that the desert Arabs are building these lofty buildings all in the Gulf countries, Khaliji countries, Saudi, UAE, Abu Dhabi. Like they're building these tall. All the tallest buildings in the world right now are in the Middle East. We understand, this part of the hadith is happening right now, and it's a sign of nubuwwah, it's a sign of prophethood, right? However, any book or lecture that you have where you get about the first part where it says "an talida ammata rabbatuha," where you'll find a slave woman or a slave girl or a bondmaid, right, giving birth to her lord. It is always described as in the books, right? In the books, in the lectures, everything is described as the children will be disrespecting their parents, or there will be mass, like all the children will not respect their parents. Okay, I'm not opposed to this definition, right? I'm not opposed to, and I want to make it clear first, right? I'm not opposed to this definition, right? However, it seems to me, for a long time, right, when I'm reading this hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ, is mentioning an aspect that happened in the Americas concerning the slave trade, the descendants of black slaves in the Americas. Now, I don't expect Easterners to know our history, like the history of the black, transatlantic slave trade. I don't expect Easterners to know that because it's our history, right? And if we're being real, Islam has been in in North America maybe less than 100 years, whereas it's been in the Middle East, Africa, South Asia for hundreds of years, right? But this particular part where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the slave woman will give birth to her master, Gorobbatuha, right? This literally happened. Excuse me. Any black or even white North American will tell you that this literally happened. It's not even like a contention in our history. Because what would happen is the slave, our forefathers are, the slave masters of our forefathers would sleep with our grandmothers, either by force or whatever. Then our grandmothers would have these light-skinned babies. And when they had these light-skinned babies, what the slave masters used to do is that they would take these babies and put them inside the house, like the slave master's house. And then these babies would be raised with the house slaves. And then that child would end up being the master of her own mother. This happened. You know what I mean? That's when I see this. This is what I see when I see this hadith, right? So now the ulema, because they don't know this aspect of our history, they're describing it as, it means that, the children are being disrespectful to their parents, right? So is that sentence in the Arabic language, is it an idiom for saying that your children will be disrespectful for you in the Arabic language? No, as far as I know, it's not. And the Prophet ﷺ, we all know that the Prophet ﷺ, he was very precise with his wording, right? If you're looking at the wording of the hadith, right, this is just our reality. This really literally in a literal sense happened. Excuse me. When I did the same thing that I'm telling you guys right now, when I said this part, a brother mentioned, he asked if it happened in Saudi as well, and I said no, it didn't. No, of course not. And I lived in Saudi for 9 years. right? And I told him, and I'm going to tell you guys what I said in my Facebook, right? And I'm going to say the same or similar thing, that I'm not saying this to disrespect Saudis in any way, shape, or form, okay? I don't want anybody to say how I disrespect the Saudis or anything like that, but every culture has its quirks, and every culture has its good things and its bad things, right? This just happens to be one of the bad things in the Khaliji or the Gulf Arabs, their culture, right? They have a slave system going on in the Middle East. It's a legit slave system, the Iqama system they have there, right? Where they would hire the poorest people from the poorest Muslim countries. And it's well known, some of these countries, their main export is human labor, like Bangladesh, Indonesia and whatnot, right? So they would hire the poorest Muslims from these countries, and they would get servants to work in their homes. And in Saudi, what happens is a lot of times these servants, they get raped, or they get, they have sexual relations with what they say kafil. Kafil is like their boss or whatever, their manager, right? But we know what it is. It's a slave master, okay? That's what it is, right? And if this woman ever got pregnant, they would send this woman packing back to her country with that Saudi baby in that woman's belly. This happens. It happens all the way up until this day, and it's not something that's uncommon. Actually, it happens quite often, right? Even some of these women would get killed, right? So they, in the Middle East, they can't even imagine, because in their worldview, they can't imagine like a woman, a slave woman, giving birth to her master. They can't imagine that in their worldview, and that's why in their worldview they think it's like disrespecting their parents. You understand? Because it's something that it just doesn't make sense to them. How can a slave woman give birth to her master? You know what I mean? Because they don't take care of their bastard children. If even when the Saudi students come over here and impregnate these white women, right? They're not taking care of their kids over here. They're not doing it. You know what I mean? And they're going back to Saudi to their life. They're very tribal people. They're very tribal, right? So for them, their lineage is extremely important. That they can tell their lineage for generations and generations and generations. They know the names of all their fathers, right? Taking care of children from slave women is not something that that happens. You understand what I'm saying? So when Islam came, it came where if you got your slave woman free, I mean, you got a slave woman pregnant, you would have to free her. You understand? You see what I'm saying? That child is not becoming the master of anybody, right? Whereas in North America, when the white slave masters would rape or sleep with, or the slave women, right? When that baby came, you can tell who which slave they slept with, because the baby's coming out light skinned. They would bring that baby into the house, raise them with the house slaves, and then that child now becomes the master, the literal master of their own mother, the literal master, not the allegorical master. You see what I'm saying? And if you look at the language that the Prophet ﷺ he used here, he said amma. He said ammata. You know what the meaning of amma means? Amma literally means slave woman, like Amatullah, the slave of Allah. For women, you say Amatullah. For men, you say Abdullah. Right? So he said Amatullah. Oh, not Amatullah, it's not Amatullah. He said Amma, and tell you that Ammata Rabbatuha, right? That the slave woman will give birth to her Rabbatuha, right? Why did the Prophet say Rabbatuha? Why didn't he say Rabbaha? Rabbatuha here, it's mu'annath. In the Arabic language, you say it's feminine. It's a female. We're talking about the mother giving birth to her female Like her daughter is like her master. You understand? Why did the Prophet say something? Why didn't he say waliday, the parents? Why didn't he say the parents will give birth to their own masters or something like this? He's specifically mentioning the woman here, right? And he didn't mention the men, right? Why would that be? Because in the situation that happened in North America, even if that woman had a husband slave, right? If it was possible, right? That the male slaves had nothing to do with the conception of the slave master's child with that woman. So it makes even more sense to me. Anyway, it makes even more sense because just the wording, right? He mentioned the woman only. The woman slave will give birth to her own master. Even though the rabbatuha, the mu'annath, it's feminine. It's not. She didn't say rabbaha. She didn't mention the males. She mentioned the females only. You see what I'm saying? So remember, even back in those days, the females were in charge of the other females. Right? This is something that's well known, well documented in our history. It's so well known, and you can ask North American blacks know it, North American whites know it. This is something that it's not even strange for us. You see what I'm saying? So we can, in us black folk, we can usually tell who this happened to by looking at the skin tone of other black people. You know what I'm saying? It's not unusual. So. Whereas Easterners, they have their own history. We don't know anything about Bangladesh history or Pakistan history or, Arab history or African history. Why would we expect, Arabs and Somalians and Africans and, South Asians who are Muslims from that side of the world come all the way over here, and understand our history. And Islam has only been here for 100 years. You guys had Islam for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, like thousands, like over 1,000 years, some of you. Right? We haven't had Islam here for that long. So we're reading the books coming from the Ulema, from the Arabs and, the South Asians, whatever. And they're all saying this means disrespectful children, because that's in their worldview, that's what that means. Right? But in our worldview, we read that and we say, no, this happened. This happened. Our grandmothers gave birth to their own slave masters. This literally happened. Not in the allegorical. You don't understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? So yeah, and for for Saudis or collegiate Arabs, because in their worldview they can't actually imagine this happening. That's why they say what they say, because they're trying to make harmony with their worldview and how they see the world, right? How we see the world in the West, because our history is different, and they don't know our history, but Allah Himself knows Allah knows everything. He knows our history, knows everything. Why wouldn't Allah mention us in a prophecy? Why wouldn't He? You see what I'm saying? So, at any rate, this is what I believe, right? I didn't mean to bash. My whole intention is not to bash Saudis or any group or anything like that. I don't do that, right? But facts are facts, and you can. This is something that's well documented how Saudis treat their slaves, not just Saudis, but collegiate Arabs anyway, right? They don't call it slavery, but it's slavery. It is, right? You'll find many cases where they don't pay their servants or whatnot. They send them back home pregnant. You can find them online. It's all kinds of stories like this. But anyway, the whole point of that is to show that didn't happen to them. It happened to us. And there's another important point that I wanted to mention. It's that a lot of the times when the slave masters, their wives, they got pregnant, and this is another thing in our history. It's not uncommon. It's actually very well known, right? They would get the black slaves to come in and be wet nurses for their children, right? So the slave master's children, they would have the black slaves be wet nurses. Even there's some terminology, like some old terminology. They used to call these women mammies, like mammies. They make cartoons about it and everything, right? So they would come in, be wet nurses for the slave master's children. And in Islam, we know that if you do this, then you know that the mother now becomes, or the wet nurse now becomes mahram for the child, Islamically, right? Islamically, right? Which is another reason, like, just the more I think about it, the more I say that this part of the hadith, it's more fitting that it matches us in our history, instead of saying, you know, like, it could possibly mean, yes, it could mean like the children disrespecting their parents, right? But we understand that from this hadith that the competing of the tall buildings, we know that this is literal because we can see it. We know it's literal because we see it happening. Well, in my opinion, it's literal because this literally happened as well. It's not an allegorical thing, unless this sentence here is an idiom that I don't know about, or there's something peculiar about the Arabic language that's making me conclude wrong that I don't know about. Then I'll take it back as you know, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not an alim. You know, I'm not a scholar in the Arabic language and by any stretch of the imagination or a grammarian, but just by face value, just looking at the wording and the meaning of what the Prophet ﷺ said here, right, and what happened to us, you know, I strongly believe that this is talking about the blacks of the North Americas. So I'm really interested to see what you guys think. Or I'm very, very, very interested to see what an alim or a tulaabul ilm thinks about this theory concerning the Hadeeth of Jibreel. I'm very interested in that, to be honest, right? And you know, anybody can look up the history and see that even it's in movies and all kinds of stuff, man. It's like not strange for us. And that's what I believe that this portion of Hadeeth of Jibreel is talking about. It's talking about the blacks of the Americas, both North and South America. This part of the Hadith literally happened. It's a prophecy about us. And so I'm interested to hear what you guys think, and any student of knowledge or anything like that, let me know what you think. If I'm wrong, again, I will take it back. Subhanaka wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Paper gold. You see, black folks are chumps. If America were to tell you to bring all the rocks in this country to her, and she'll give you $1 million for it, you'll do it. And the next day she'll tell you we're using rocks for currencies, chump.